Decided to kick back with Kat, enjoy a beer, and unwind at the KT Connections cabin. I don't know if anybody's going to end up watching right now on. Oh, you know what? I think I probably named this wrong and everything. Let me kill this real quick. Now I'll just let it go. We'll figure it out later. But apparently, we named this "Welcome Back: The Benefits of Taking a Break." I am not taking a break, so I'm lying to people already, and that's okay, I suppose. But yeah, whatever. Failed launches. Yeah. So let me tell the backstory on this. Casey, the CEO of KT Connections, offered us a cabin for myself and Mackenzie Brown and a lot of the Black Point Cyber folks to do some interviews here. It's a beautiful location. And we had it today and we had it yesterday, but all the crew isn't coming in until later. So we decided to go ahead and want to take advantage and say thank you to Casey for allowing us to use this cabin to kind of debrief day one of the event here at Wild West Hackenfest, which KT Connections is right up here. I get the benefit of coming and spending some time with them on Friday morning at 8 o'clock to go spend some time with their people. So it's going to be a really fun kind of AMA. But Kat, we're here in basically lead or led. Somebody can make fun of me or correct me if I'm wrong, but South Dakota, and we're here basically for Wild West Hackenfest. Anybody in the audience, if you're watching it all right now, I know this is like an automatic kind of pop in real quick stream and nobody may be watching at this time, but if you are, comment if you've ever been to Wild West Hackenfest or if you're familiar with Black Hills Information Security or Black Hills InfoSec. Their team puts on this kind of smaller event every year. I think this is my third time coming to this. Yep. And it's one of those events where I go to polish my skills, to learn things, to have others teach me. How can you be a security practitioner if you don't understand, right, that you have to keep learning? So one of the things that you kind of said today, Kat, you were doing, some try hack me today. Right. And I come into the room after my 8 hours with Bo Bullock, the most brilliant human I've gotten to work with in recent years. But what'd you have today? What did you do?
I basically banged my head against a wall for an answer that was right in front of my face. That was fantastic.
Cheers. Welcome to cybersecurity and CTFs in general. Kat's been working on her Try Hack Me. And we have been kind of, 27 days now. So in your first 30 days, I might ask you to elaborate kind of on what you've learned, right? So we've got the first one has some settings set. I don't know who the privacy settings are, so I apologize. Wild West Hackenfest. Yep, it's awesome up here in Deadwood, South Dakota. And then Joseph's flying in tomorrow. Sweet. I came in for the pre-day training. In fact, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I just got done with Bo Bullock. Bo and I met a few years ago. I've been doing a lot of demonstration of EvilGenix 2 and now EvilGenix 3. And, he had made a mention in a conversation that someone brought to me and said, hey, Bo says that FIDO tokens are totally usable. And I said, well, they're not phishable in the sense that at this time there's not an easy way to fish those FIDO tokens in that way because the URL callback will fail. Now, as it turns out, some of the stuff that he's releasing on Thursday, and I won't spoil it for everybody that hasn't seen, is actually going to abuse just that in some ways that are very unique, and I think are just brilliant. And in a kit that's being released, I won't get into too much of what it was. But the point, for me is that it really reinforced as I went through the labs with Bo today, focusing on AWS and the similarities to Google Compute or GCP and the similarities to Microsoft Azure, Azure AD, Entra ID, all of those things, and how they all have abuses from an enumeration perspective, how they all have abuses from a exploitation and escalation of privilege perspective, and how common settings often get you in trouble. And a lot of the things we talked about today are kind of a capstone on a lot of the stuff that I've actually been digging into. And even today, I learned new things that I would want to go put in place as a blue teamer, right? Like I would want to go in and put Azure password security in place on some of those things. There's certain CA policies I hadn't considered. There's certain capabilities inside that of Azure and the way you would set it up from an infrastructure perspective with service principles and all kinds of stuff that I just hadn't considered. And I'm not trying to rehash all of that class because it would be a brain dump nobody wants. But ultimately, I would say, if you're a blue team person, if you're somebody that's in cybersecurity that's trying to protect assets, trying to protect things, whatever it may be, and especially you and MSPs, if you're not doing things to actively learn how the threat actors operate, right? To actively, whether it be reading wise, learning, from a conceptual perspective, or whether it be actually like getting down into kinesthetically doing it, like going through the actions of actually assuming the identity of another by assigning service principal rights, and going through the actions of actually gathering data for Bloodhound to look at Azure with Azure Hound, and some of the things that are coming from that show you those pivot paths and escalations. How in the hell would you ever put things in place to protect them? How would you ever understand how to identify someone being there? A great example is we were talking about using a playbook, and we demonstrated using a playbook to re-execute with a webhook externally after losing access to a cloud account for persistence. And when you think about that, you predefine a playbook in that user's context to reset that user's password, to reset another user, to create whatever the things might be in that context. And then I can just call on that with a webhook. I can just go to a web URL and reinsert myself back in. And what that means is, if let's say the blue team came in and said, all right, I reset Matt's passwords on his Azure account or his Azure AD, Entra ID, my M365, however you want to call it, right, on that core identity, I reset the passwords, refresh tokens, right? I saw this exhaustive list from an MSP the other day showing their IR steps in containment phase of an incident response from, a cloud perspective. And what's interesting is there's nothing in there to check for playbooks. And if you don't know those exist, then I can just call a webhook 5 days after you're done wrapping up your IR investigation and do it again, right? And have access yet again. And so I think it's just one of those things where, for me, I don't want to spend too much of y'all's time with me just blathering on, but I will say it's so great just to disconnect, not have anything else that you're responsible for, and spend a day to learn. Right. And I think, there's one of those things that I would say I really enjoyed Bo's class for that today. So I'm kind of in an AMA state. Kat and I both have a beer here. You're welcome to ask Kat or I any questions you have. I see several people popped on here, so I'm getting the comments. If it doesn't last long, the sun's setting and we didn't have access to the cabin long, so we'll wrap it up. This was really just kind of a test and an appreciation to Casey over at KT Connections for letting us use his cabin and letting us spend some time up here talking about the class. But what were you working on today in the interim? What were you working on today in TriHack Me? What was the class you were in?
I was working on Linux. It was the part 3 fundamentals.
Okay. Part 3 Linux fundamentals. And what were you working on that actually had you so stumped? Was it a flag? There's Eric Bowles. What's up, buddy? And Eric, I'm going to say, I'm not doing this Eric Bowles style because I do have a good camera and I have great lighting and I have great microphones, but it is just kind of plop it up with no agenda and just get started. So, AKA a little bit Eric Bowles style, but not quite. So anyways.
No, it was a cron tab. I just had to look it up.
Okay. Cron being, do you remember what cron does?
It's the one that you can add or delete programs. No. Running things that you can plan to run, right? A cron job is kind of scheduled, planned task or otherwise executed task in that regard. Oh, Connor said, great to see you, Matt. Thanks for the insight as always. I don't know how insightful I'm being today. I will say that I'm at least very thankful for all of the other practitioners out here. I think one of the things that stood out was we probably worked through, I'd say 15 or 20 individual tools in different capacitances through the Breaching the Cloud training that I took today with Bo Bullock. And I actually got his permission to demonstrate some of his tools, some of the things that's on his. If you're not following it, Daft Hack is a fantastic GitHub repo for a lot of really neat tools. But I'm going to try to help people learn some of the context I learned today about some of the abuses that are available with a pure Azure AD. And I actually postulated this question 2 or 3 years ago in my own ignorance, and maybe in the industry's ignorance in general. But what if I was in a world where I was just AAD centric? I was just using an identity provider. Jeremy, to your point, right? What does he say? Tell me who you feel are the top IAM providers. Oh man, don't pull me down that road. I did say AMA. I would probably say identity and access management is what you're saying there if I was defining the things here. And I presume what you're really saying is who are the best IDPs or identity providers out there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, on that statement. Maybe I'll get that answered for you. So yeah, I got off track because it was such a good question. And we'll go through some comments real quick. So Eric Bowles said, yeah, Hart, I love you too, buddy. If you're not familiar with Eric and what he's doing, he's got vosa.co, vosa.co. He's really trying to teach people how to be creators. And, one of the things that we talk about, and he says on stage a lot, is like we say as engineers, we're not creative.
We're not creative. He goes on to then point out all the creative and interesting things, right, that we do to make solutions happen, right? These beautiful solutions that we put together to automate people's worlds, to orchestrate, to manage their worlds. Like, we are creators ultimately. And so if you're not familiar with Eric, he's got some cool stuff he's doing over there. So I want to tackle this. Jeremy, go ahead and comment in comments for me, please, if you're still there, if I've hit the nail on the head, that you're really talking about those identity providers, whether it be Microsoft, Okta, Ping, a lot of those other players out there, and what their benefits they bring, and why. And then we'll go from there. Degley, great to see you, buddy. It's awesome always to see you. I hate that you had a flat. You know, my buddy Degley and I and Kat, you know, we rode 100 miles together in Ohio with Jason Slagle, who will be here tomorrow. And it was a awesome charity ride. And my fundraising this year, our fundraising this year, has only raised about $30,000 or $40,000 compared to last year at 200,000. But next year's $1 million. And I've got some really cool stuff cooking to try to raise $1 million in charity next year. So, you know, good on you, Degley. I'm sorry for bailing out on you in the last minute. I'm a terrible friend and a terrible person in general, I suppose. It's okay. I'll catch you next time, though, I promise. I love John Fry. I love it when Matt Lee says postulate. Yeah, no, I wish. Oh, Josh says Dave must be near. No, Kat and I are here just being nerds. We're just here to learn. We're here to consume Wild West Hackin' Fest and left the dog at home this time to just be nerds, right? So Jeremy's question. Jeremy said, who do you think the best IAM or top IAM providers are, and why? Jeremy, this is not a fair question. Maybe this is going to turn into clickbait, but I don't think I would be fair to define the top IAM providers. If I was just going to say that you have the largest consumer base in Microsoft, just in the understanding that every single Microsoft 365 account you have or Office 365 account you have is correlated to an underlying IDP called Entra ID or previously AAD. So it's probably the broadest. Now, if I was being joking, I might say the broadest IDP is Facebook, but anyways, sorry, because everybody signs in with Facebook, but I digress. But the point is, I think at a business case, what's the top IDP? I am the most familiar with Microsoft. I understand the value in Microsoft. I understand what they do. I do believe that there's probably a growing conversation to have third-party or external identity providers that are relied upon for various functions that then feed into that space, whether that be Google consuming it or Microsoft consuming it or whoever it may be. And by that, I mean, like, think about what companies like Credivera are doing up in Canada with, verified credentials that tie in through the Entra ID platform and the Entra verified credentials or aspect of that. So I think there's some really cool stuff that's coming in that regard. But who are the top? I mean, obviously you could just do it by revenue. It's going to be your Oktas, your Pings, your Microsoft, Google, to some extent AWS, but mainly in the service of AWS or in the service of consumption on the underlying end of the actual, websites that are being created for people. So sorry if I've disappointed you on that one, Jeremy. I don't know that I could name the top identity providers out there. I would say that Microsoft probably has the largest consumer base and probably has the largest base of good from which I could build a very secure offering, right? I've said this for years. I've been AADJ since, Matt. Duo is not an IDP directly, right, Matt? Duo is a secondary MFA provider. They don't in and of themselves create their own identity providership. Like they may offer a SAML response to something. Maybe even they're heading down the OAuth response space, which I haven't looked at, or OIDC, but I know right now they're not directly an IDP in my mind. Talk me off a shelf here. But okay, very cool. Yeah, Jeremy, thanks, buddy. I hope that helped in a little way. I got doing down a tangent. I don't remember what it was. You pull me back from the brink of death here. It's not happening.
Yeah, no.
Okay, that's fair. All right, we'll leave it back to the AMA on this. Just happy that you have friends, nerd. Well, even Kat, does that count? Chris Johnson? Chris Johnson's another dude here. It's great to have you. I don't think you're coming to this one with me, are you, buddy? I feel a little bit abandoned, I mean, you've been with me at the last 9 conferences I've been at there, Chris Johnson. If you're not familiar with Chris is driving CompTIA's cybersecurity and compliance programs. I'm not sure I've nailed the title correctly, but ultimately he's driving a lot of what's behind Trustmark and a lot of what's behind just the growing capabilities of us setting some of our own standards, right? And us adhering to them. So if you haven't checked out Trustmark, you should. It's definitely a program if you're in the MSP space to follow. So back to Wild West Hackin' Fest, I think, if you haven't been to this conference and you are a practitioner, or if you're in the MSP space and you're really wanting to broaden your eyes to a larger base of understanding and see it from the other side more, Much like GurCon, I think, but different in its own way, you have Wild West Hackin' Fest. What's interesting about Wild West Hackin' Fest is it is very much practitioner focused. The pre-classes are bar none probably the best. I think there were 65 people that signed up for the Breaching the Cloud class today. I would bet there were 40-ish people that I counted there. So you have a pretty high attendance rate, which I guess if you're paying $1,000 for a class, you expect a fairly high attendance rate, I think. The labs were really fast paced. I would probably say, Bo warned us in the beginning, like, hey, don't expect to complete these labs. Like, I'm going to be available for 6 months. You can reach out to me on these. Like, we'll keep the lab set up the way it is. But I've taken away at least 5 or 6 nuggets that I'm definitely going to go and dig into. Let me see if I can talk about some of the points that I walked away with for sure, that I want to do some video content on. Lots of passwords and plain text passwords on my browsers. That's great. Or on my notepad. One of the first ones was, let's see, AAD internals. I need to do a video on that. That's true. So AD internals is an older tool for kind of enumeration. AAD internals is another great one. Cloudy Noom is amazing for finding AWS buckets. I think that was really fun. Searching Git repositories for keys and some of the structure of how to find those and the automation of how that works is amazing. It was a little bit unknown to me before this. Really enjoyed doing some password spraying and tests and some spraying evasion, where you could actually evade some of the built-in protections for number of times you were going against, or sending your credential against it. What up, Wes Spencer? I can't wait to see you, buddy. I know we have some time scheduled here real soon to catch up. I think it'll be definitely at IT. I don't know, actually. I don't know where we're going to catch up next, but I'm excited about it nonetheless. And Scott Minky, just saw you last week, buddy. It's always nice to see you. I actually picked up Scott. Scott's been to, I think he was at my first cybersecurity boot camp that we did, the what do you call it, off-brand one that Dom and I kind of squeezed in called, right. What do we call it? Security Throwdown. Yeah. I think Minky was at Throwdown. And at Throwdown, I demonstrated some attacks. And one of those is one that Bo is actually releasing in his new tool that's going to be really neat. So Duo thinks they're an IDP, but I agree. I guess, Matt, like I'll let you talk me off the ledge on that one. Matt says Duo seems to think they're an IDP and give me a link for it. I think the biggest challenge for me is that Duo as an IDP certainly doesn't have a lot of the richness of the identity enrichment. They consume it from a lot of places, right? Like they consume it from Microsoft, they consume it from AD or LDAP, they consume it and they kind of centralize it at the MFA layer. But they do, and to your point, have a Duo Access Gateway or DAG or another cloud version of it, and they do serve as that access point. We used it. You got to use it, actually. I won't say what the address was, but you know what it was for Iconic. And you had to sign into your Duo Access Gateway and launch your applications from that. So, yeah, Wes said, you too, my friend. Wes and I are actually cooking up something really cool. Me and Wes and Henry and a bunch of people. And we'll wind up in New Jersey doing some scouting for the film. And by the way, since we're talking about it, actually, there's some cool stuff still yet to come from our time here. So Jason Slagle, myself, and Bo Bullock, and maybe we're getting in John Strand from BHIS as well, are going to play on one team. And Mackenzie Brown, her videographer, her advanced resource group or ARG or advanced threat group, ATG people, APG, advanced persistent group. I think I butchered it. Sorry, y'all. Are going to do Babes, and it's going to be Beards versus Babes in beer pong. Now, the fun part is that my team's going to lose because I have one eye. Like I have no depth of perception. I'm not going to be able to. If you ever make it. 100%. It's 100% going to be just bare luck if we do make it. But anyway, so we're going to do a live stream, I think, of that. If not, we're definitely going to do a post-produced piece of content. But I would bet we live stream it out of a saloon here in Deadwood. With Mackenzie and team versus myself and Slagle and all the bearded cybersecurity fellows. So it'll be Beards versus Baby Faces or Beards versus Babes doing that. And then we're also going to do a live stream, I believe, recorded stream, myself and Mackenzie and Jason Slagle and everybody sitting down talking about some of the things at Wild West Hackin' Fest. Because I'm in the pre-day. There's not a lot to talk about yet from a stage presentation perspective. It's really just what those pre-day trainings were. But we're going to have some really cool content, I think. Jason's disconnecting completely from his business for a few days to actually nerd out with me. And anyways, just wanted to go live from, fall nerd camp or nerd fall camp or however you want to call it, and say thank you for everybody being here. So what was it, what did you learn out of your last 27 days, you think, Kat, that was the most beneficial for you in cybersecurity? And I made her drink a beer first so she'd be more loose to be on camera. But
the most that I've
what'd you learn that stood out? What stuck with you? What are the things?
Just learning basic Linux.
Yeah? You never used Linux before? Once.
Sort of.
Kinda. It was GUI.
Kind of, but it was different. No, long time ago.
Oh, Jax. Oh, Jack's gonna be here? Oh my Lord, Jeebus. What?
Squirrel.
Sorry, Squirrel. Yeah, Jax is like super dope. It's great to see you, Jax. Yeah. Anyway, so you learned basic Linux. And it was interesting. So I will say, Kat and I used Linux that she got to be exposed to it when we homeschooled our kids for a year or two, and we did everything in Ubuntu, which is an early Ubuntu version that had an educational spin, had cool games in it and stuff. Kids had an identity, track what they did in it. It was fun. How we kind of automated that. But that was all GUI. That was all on the front end, right? Click and see. But now you're working in CLI or command line interface, right? You're working predominantly in CLI. And so you're actually having to learn that you can hit tab. And, I think, what about case sensitivity? Have you figured out case sensitivity yet in Linux? So in Linux, one of the more frustrating aspects that plays out is, if you're not familiar with case sensitivity, a capital R, when you type in capital R tab, if it was a lowercase r, it will not find the file you are looking for. It is case sensitive. And so it is also case sensitive on usernames. So I don't know if I just gave you an aha moment on a couple of screw ups in the middle of these labs you're doing, but certainly case sensitivity will screw you if you're not familiar with that in Linux. Well, you would figure it out kind of naturally. And one of the things I'd say, if you're actually doing TryHackMe, and I'd say this to you, going through TryHackMe, is I will say there is a learning curve that is not directly addressed in every lesson. And there are things that you have to be willing to go figure out what you don't know. You have to go search. You said to me today, I Google searched, right? Some things, and I figured it out.
Search some things out.
And you figured it out.
And then I went to watch the video.
Yeah, but what does that teach you? That's our life. Like, that is the same thing that we've lived as technicians. It is FAFO, 100%. Which, by the way, I've got an update. Let me do a couple comments real quick. Mohammed gave me an octopus. I don't want to miss out on that because it's a pretty dope octopus. Actually, I'm not sure if I missed something. Jax, super dope. I can't believe I'm going to get to see you tomorrow. Jax is another live streamer, way more prolific and valuable than I am. But she gets to spend a lot of time on camera talking to people. Love you too. Big hugs for sure. Can't wait to see you. It's going to be awesome. I'm so super stoked. I got off on a tangent there. Yep, it happens. It's just the living in the day and the life of it, right? It's for sure. But, when you think about learning cybersecurity, you have to be willing to go say, what am I seeing here?
Or what am
when you're hacking, if you're trying to put together a system, like, if think about it, back in the days, anybody that's technicians out here going, how do I make this thing work? Like, the vendor says this is how it works, and I'm going to plug it in and it's just going to work, and I'm going to do these things, and now I've got to do all this stuff to make it function because of these variables outside of their understanding and control. And so I think what's great about TryHackMe, and is also kind of a challenge for TryHackMe, is depending on where you find yourself, there are certain barriers to entry where you just get frustrated and go, I'm fucking done, Matt. I don't know what to do. Right. And I'm like, oh, it's right here. Just, this one. Hit that tab. Okay, you got it. I think it was like one where it was grepping. You were grepping information out of a file. And it was just like, they just didn't give you quite enough for it to land.
They don't show all of the steps. And so you miss some parts that should be within those steps to go over.
I call that the teacher's dilemma. And I actually suffer from it quite a bit. Like, I often go, what, you don't get this? Like, this is so basic.
Right, and you don't realize that
there's a gap.
More steps
that
you're actually taking to get to that same answer.
And so I would say, if you get frustrated and TryHackMe, there's tons of walkthroughs. One of the things you brought up today is like, there's a walkthrough. Some dude just showed me the answer. And I'm like, but the challenge is you have to find a balance between getting the answer from somebody so you can contextualize where you failed.
Stopped it before he showed the answer.
What? Super high five, because you don't want to cheat yourself the learning.
When I started really
Well, if you've ever been in that position, you can identify with Kat. I have certainly, for sure, been in a position where it's like, I'm just done. I'm mentally over. I can't find the answer. And it's usually when you disconnect and then look at it again, you get it or you catch those helps. But I don't think I'm adding any more value to anybody here today, unless there's any AMA questions out here. I think we did have something else pop up. It was Kat saying, I was Jack saying, Kat, you're a rock star. I love your shirt. Yeah, this is the way. Yep. Yeah, for sure. I actually had a guy, it was great. He called me out. He goes, "Oh, that's this year's GurCon. Did you catch my presentation?" I was like, "Did you catch my presentation?" He's like, "Touche." But I did not, and he did not. And his was certainly more nerdy than mine. So anyways, come join us next year at Wild West Hacking Fest if you haven't done this before. It is so valuable. It's kind of weird. You're disconnected. You're off in this kind of odd vibe somewhere out in nowhere land and beautiful mountains up here near all these, national monuments and such. And it's just totally worth it. So I'm going to get to see some really awesome people tomorrow. We got Jax Ass. We've got Jerry Auger. We've got Heath coming in town from TCM. He's doing a keynote. Like, there's just so many amazing people. So I'm super excited and privileged to be here and get to learn from some of the best. And I will do my best to take what I've learned and disseminate it to all my friends and people in the MSP community as much as I can. So thanks for being here, y'all. Kat, I appreciate you going against your best interest in your mind of being on live camera.
Yeah.
So everybody that's watching, tell Kat how good she did. She is one of those where I think everybody goes through this. And maybe I don't end just now. I would say if you're ever in this position, Jackson, maybe you can comment on this. Like, at some point, you just have to start. You just have to put your thoughts out there. You just have to go out and connect and start kind of finding what people need to hear and what's valuable, and just do it and kind of get over yourself, right? I think once you drop that ego and realize that I suck and I'm just going to try to be better every day, and I'm going to try to get, and share my thoughts and grow and help add value to the world and serve my mission, it gets easy. And I'm just really proud of you for A, going outside your comfort zone, and B, spending the time to learn the technical aspects of it, because you've had to listen to it for so long. For me, I have to imagine there's a base layer of understanding in
Somewhere,
there.
yes.
In fact, if you don't know it, like world record wise, Kat has probably listened to me longer than Wilson, my volleyball, that I have to talk to when everybody else is done hearing cybersecurity conversations. So yeah, it's unfortunate. See y'all later. Appreciate y'all being here. Bye.